A long time ago, in the middle of the Arabian desert, arose a prophet, the last of all messengers, sent with the final revelation, a mercy to every corner of the world, calling humanity to return to its Creator. This revelation, the noble Qur'an, is not only a guide to living the faith that Allah has chosen, but a treasury of truths, knowledge beyond the reach of any mind of that era, illuminated only by divine wisdom. Among these timeless truths is the account of creation unfolding across the universe. From the very beginning, the creation of mankind has stood as one of the greatest signs of the Creator. In the Qur'an, Surah At-Tin 95:4, Allah declares that He created mankind in the best stature, formed in the most complete and upright manner, both in body and natural disposition. In Surah Al-Baqarah 2:30, Allah informed the angels of His decree to place upon the earth a Khalqah, a successor entrusted with responsibility, beginning with Prophet Adam. In Surah Sa'd 38:71-72, Allah provides further detail regarding the creation of the human being.
When your Lord said to the angels, "Indeed, I am creating a human being from clay," Sa'd 38:71. So, when I have proportioned him and breathed into him of my created soul, then fall down to him in prostration. Sa'd 38:72.
The word ruhi cannot be translated literally. Rather, it should be understood interpretively as referring to the element of life and soul that Allah created for the body, not His own spirit or any part of Himself, as some mistakenly believe. In Surah Sa'd 38:71, Allah states that He created the human being from clay, similar to Surah Al-Hijr 15:28, where this account is elaborated by describing creation from altered mud. While other verses refer to mankind's origin from turab, earth, soil or dust, Surah Al-Mu'minun 23:12 describes the creation of the human being from su'alatin mintin, an extract of clay. The Quran also states that Allah created every living thing from water. Modern science confirms that the human body is formed from elements originating in the earth, which aligns conceptually with these Quranic verses revealed over 1,400 years ago. Truly remarkable. Let us now turn to the next phase. In Surah Az-Zumar 39:6, Allah says,
He created you from one soul, then He made from it its mate, and He produced for you from the grazing livestock 8 pairs. He creates you in the wombs of your mothers, creation after creation, within 3 darknesses, that is, Allah, your Lord. To Him belongs dominion. There is no deity except Him, so how are you turned away? Az-Zumar 39:6.
The phrase "from a single soul" is understood by the classical exegetes to refer to Prophet Adam and its mate to Hawa. Allah then mentions that He provided mankind with 8 pairs of grazing livestock, a reference to camels, cattle, sheep and goats in male and female pairs, created as a means of sustenance, benefit, and mercy. As explained in Surah Al-An'am 6:143-144, Allah explicitly refutes the superstitious and fabricated prohibitions imposed by pre-Islamic Arabs concerning these animals, including claims regarding the permissibility of unborn offspring found in their wombs. These rulings were not divinely sanctioned, but were human inventions. The verse then shifts to the internal side of creation, stating that Allah creates human beings, creation after creation, within the wombs of their mothers, in 3 layers of darkness. Classical and contemporary interpretations explain these 3 darknesses as layers enveloping the developing human being, commonly understood as the abdominal wall, the womb, uterus, and the amniotic membrane. This also corresponds to a firm lodging, as stated in the continuation of the verse in Surah Al-Mu'minun 23:13.
Then we placed him as a sperm drop in a firm lodging. Al-Mu'minun 23:13.
This refers to the secure environment of the womb, a marvel of divine design. The verse then continues by describing the stages of development.
Then we made the sperm drop into a clanging substance, and we made the clanging substance into a lump, and we made the lump into bones, and we covered the bones with flesh. Then we developed him into another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. Al-Mu'minun 23:14.
The verse describes the sequential stages of human prenatal development, from a sperm drop to a fully formed being. In the 17th century, some scientists proposed the theory of preformationism, which held that a tiny, fully formed human called a homunculus already existed at conception and merely grew larger during pregnancy. This theory later split into two main camps. One, spermists, animalculists. They claimed that the fully formed miniature human was contained within the sperm, and that the female womb merely provided nourishment. Two, ovists. They argued instead that the miniature human existed within the female ovum, with the sperm serving only to activate development. Both views assumed that human form was present from the beginning, rather than developing gradually. Modern embryology has completely rejected preformationism. It is now understood that human form emerges progressively through distinct stages, with organs and structures differentiating over time, and that no miniature human exists within the sperm or the ovum. Yet, the Qur'an emphasizes stages in transformation, revealed long before such technological tools existed, which is truly remarkable. This topic has been examined in greater detail by Dr. Keith Moore.
Now we look at the nutfa stage, which is the initial stage, which is what in ordinary embryology we would call the zygote. The word nutfa means a small amount of fluid, or a drop of it. As the first stage, called the nutfa, it includes 5 phases, or substages, which involve the mixing of male and female germinal fluids, fertilization, implantation, and early cell division. And so we'll deal then with the phases of the nutfa. And the first is the mani. It's been discovered that the first stage is formed from a part of the male fluid, that is the nutfa of the father, which includes the sperm, and part of the female fluid, which is the nutfa of the mother, which includes the ovum. Now the Arabic term mani is used mainly to describe the sperm, although it is also used to describe both the sperm and the ovum. During the fertilization process, the male fluid travels from the vagina up through the uterus and meets the female fluid in the uterine tube or oviduct, or as some people call it, the fallopian tube. According to the Islamic statements, fertilization does not occur from all of the fluids, from the male and the female, but from a minute portion of them. As the Qur'an states, was he not a drop of germinal fluid, mani, emitted? And mani here refers to the sperm and the ovum. Other components of the male and female fluids aid in the fertilization process. The semen, that is the mixture of sperms and fluids, contain hormones called prostaglandins, which induce the uterine contractions, and they may aid in the transport of the sperm to the fertilization site. Important components of the female fluid also contribute to this process. During the female fertile phase of the woman's menstrual cycle, the cervical mucus, which is otherwise fairly impervious to sperm, becomes clear and gel-like through a realignment of its molecules and allows the sperms to pass. Enzymes secreted by the linings of the uterus and the oviducts capacitate, that is, they remove a covering from the sperm, which are called glycoproteins, and this enables it to then participate in fertilization. Sperms are unable to fertilize ova unless they've been capacitated. Additionally, enzymes are secreted by the oviducts, which loosen the follicular cells surrounding the ovum and expose its protective membrane to the sperm. The fact that the fluids of the male and the female are involved with fertilization was mentioned in the following hadith. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, was asked by a Jewish person, "O Muhammad, what is man created from?" the Prophet answered, "O Jew, he is created from both, from the fluid of the man and the fluid of the woman." Thus, the word nutfa used in the hadith is a very comprehensive term. Now, the next term is called sulala. This refers to the selection from the male and the female fluids, as the following passage mentions. Not from all fluid is the offspring created. And when I was asked about this, I explained that when we develop, we only develop from a small portion. Thus, the creation from both fluids occurs through a special selection. The Quranic term for this selection is sulala, which means in Arabic, gentle extraction from fluid. It is now known that both the ovum and the sperm are gently extracted from their environments in the process of fertilization. The ovum is selected from a long stream of follicular fluid, while one sperm out of millions is selected from the seminal fluid. The first sperm, which touches the cell membrane of the ovum, enters easily, but immediately afterwards, a rapid change occurs in the cell membrane, selecting that sperm only, and all other sperms are locked out. Now, talk again about the nutfa or nutfa amshad. The fertilized ovum, or zygote as we call it, takes the form of a drop, or a nutfa amshad, which is a drop of mingled fluid. As God says in the Qur'an, we created man from a drop of mingled fluid, that is the nutfa amshad. An important point with regard to this phrase is the fact that nutfa is a singular noun, while amshad is a plural modifying adjective. According to the conventional rules of grammar, singular nouns are normally modified by singular adjectives, and thus the term nutfa amshad was a mystery to early Quranic scholars. However, this peculiarity in the language can now be explained, since we now know that the zygote remains singular as a nutfa, while internally the chromosomes and other contributions from the sperm and ovum form a plural mixture described as amshad. Therefore, from a scientific point of view, amshad is entirely accurate as a plural adjective modifying the singular nutfa, which is really a multifaceted entity, single entity. This stage continues in development, maintaining the shape of the nutfa, but dividing it into smaller and smaller cells called blastomeres. Until about 4 days later, it forms a spherical mass of cells known as a morula. 5 days after fertilization, the nutfa then forms a blastocyst as the morula cells separate into two parts. During this time, the term amshad very appropriately applies to the nutfa in all of its developments, since it continues to be a multifaceted entity. The next stage is called takdir. In the early formation of the nutfa amshad, the chromosomes form from both parents, and they mix, and that is what gives rise to the human embryo. This genetic mixture will determine the characteristics of the child as well as the child's sex. As the Qur'an mentions, He created him from nutfa and immediately laid down the plan or the program of his future development. He created him then agrees completely with our understanding. We know that the chromosomes from the mother and the father unite at fertilization, and that we are then a mixture of the chromosomes of our mothers and fathers. And that this is all determined at this very early stage of nutfa. And we didn't understand that until probably about in the 1920s. Now, the last stage of this early development is called hearth. In the last phase of the nutfa amsha, the blastocyst implants into the endometrium or the lining of the uterus. This passage from the Qur'an states, "Your wives are a tilth or a hearth unto you, so approach your tilth when or how you will." Tilth or hearth refers to cultivation of the soil. So it's clear that an understanding of the lining of the uterus, or what we call the endometrium, was very much like soil, that when the blastocyst implants, it gets its nourishment from the mother's blood, just as a plant, roots of a plant get its nourishment from the soil. The last step of the nutfa stage begins with implantation of the blastocyst and is called the hearth phase. The Qur'an considers this process analogous to the cultivation of the soil and the lining of the uterus like soil in which the seed develops. Indeed, the blastocyst embeds and roots itself into the endometrium with cells which will eventually form the placenta, just as the seed embeds itself in the soil. This shows the uterus at the top, and the red area, which is blown up in the bottom, is the lining of the endometrium of the uterus, into which the blastocyst, or early human embryo, implants, and it gets its nourishment from those blood vessels and mother's blood, which carries the oxygen and nutrient substances to it. And the comparison then to a seed developing in the soil is a very accurate one. So that the development and the structural changes which occur during the nutfa stage are virtually impossible to detect without a microscope due to the minute size of the nutfa. This second or shaping stage begins as the alaka, which is an Arabic word meaning a leech. And when I was first asked about this, did the human embryo look like a leech? And when I thought about this for a few minutes, I realized that it resembled the leech very closely, as you will see. During the early stage, the embryo loses its rounded shape and elongates until it takes the shape of a leech. And this picture here, I went over to our library and got out a book on leeches and had my artist draw that exactly from the textbook showing a leech. And here's a human embryo here, and they're on the 21, 22 days. And I think you have to agree that they look very much alike. In fact, you see that the leech has segments, just like a worm, and the human embryo has these same segments. In fact, we still have a remnant of those segments in our bodies. If any of you have ever had shingles, ever heard of anyone having shingles, you always get the eruptions and bands across the area that's infected, and those bands are the remnants of those segments. So this is what I believe to be the leech-like appearance of the human embryo. And I believe in my descriptions in my book, I talk about it having a leech-like appearance. The similarity between the embryo and a leech is amazing. The embryo is attached to the wall of the chorionic sac, which is attached by chorionic villi to the endometrium or lining of the uterus. And so the human embryo is attached to the lining of the uterus, just like a leech will attach to your skin. I don't know whether you have leeches here or not, but we have certain lakes in Canada. If you go in swimming, these leeches will attach to your skin and suck the blood. So the analogy there is quite amazing. When I was asked what this meant, it says, it reminded me of an embryo at this stage. And when I was told that the mudga meant a chewed substance, I thought of the embryo here. You see these little bead-like structures, which we call somites. They are the beginning of what will be the vertebrae or the backbone. And I suggested that this chewed stage could be referring to these somites, which have the appearance of a chewed substance. If you take, as I did at that time, took a piece of gum and bit into it, and you're left with these teeth marks, which look very much like this. So This stage, the mudga stage, occurs at about 26 to 27 days, and we call that the somite period in descriptive embryology. The transformation from the alaka to the mudga is very rapid, and during the last day or two of the alaka stage, the embryo is beginning to develop some of the characteristics of the mudga, that is, the somites begin to appear. The word mudga means a piece of substance which has been chewed, and is used to describe this next phase of embryonic development. It should apply with the shape of a substance that the teeth have chewed. In fact, the appropriateness of this term mudga has been indicated in modern embryology. It has been termed that after the formation of the embryo in the placenta, this stage, the embryo receives its nutrients and energy, thereby rapidly increasing the growth process. The bodily masses called somites, from which the bones and the muscle will form, start to appear. During the multitude of bead-like structures or somites that are present, the embryo has the appearance of a substance that had been imprinted by teeth. The processes of this period can be recognized in the following points. First, the appearance of the somites or the imprints changes constantly, just as the teeth imprints change on a substance with each act of chewing. The embryo changes its overall shape, but the structure derived from the somites remain. And secondly, the embryo turns in its position due to the modifications in its center of gravity with the new tissue formation, similar to the turning of a substance with chewing. And third, just as a chewed substance becomes curled before being swallowed, so does the back of the embryo become curved. And four, as the somites form, the internal features of the embryo in the mudga stage are partly differentiated into organ anlaga, that means the beginning of structures, and partly undifferentiated. And this description is also stated in the Qur'an. Now, this is a later stage of mudga. You can see the tail that we all had at that stage, and this little flipper-like structure is what's going to be your upper limb. And so this is the mudga stage. The next slide. Then out of the chewed-like substance, partly differentiated and partly undifferentiated. And when I was asked what this surah meant, it said it's clear to me that an embryo at that stage is only partly differentiated. In other words, some of the organs, like the early development of the eye and the ear and the heart, some parts are well differentiated, others are poorly differentiated, and some are undifferentiated. And so we have this mixture which agrees exactly with this particular surah. Thus the term mudga is very meaningful, since the embryo is a lump of irregularly shaped tissue at this stage, and a creation of systems is occurring while the overall process is incomplete. Some of the organs will form in the mudga stage, and some will form in later stages. Now the next stage is called the izam stage. This subsequent stage, phase of development, is referred to as izam, which means bones. And the fetus does indeed acquire a cartilaginous skeleton after the mudga stage. Those of you that have studied embryology realize that first of all you have what we call mesenchymal bones made out of connective tissue, then they become cartilaginous, and then they become ossified and become bones, solid bones. The formation of the bone does not begin uniformly throughout the body. Rather, there's a sequential appearance of bony tissue. In recent decades, the process of osteogenesis in the human embryo has been reasonably well documented. Bone development in the limbs commences in the embryonic limb buds from these mesenchymal or connective tissue cells. Primary ossification centers appear in the femur during the 5th week. The femur is your thigh bone. And in the sternum, it's breastbone, and the maxilla, jaw, during 8 to 9 weeks. The timing of the izam phase has been mentioned in the following hadith. These simply show these various stages when, at this stage, the bones in the limb would be cartilaginous. The same here, you're starting to get little indications of the bones developing. And in this hadith says, when 42 nights have passed from the time of the nutfa, that is the time of conception, Allah sends an angel to it who shapes it and makes its ears, eyes, skin, muscles, and bones. In the early part of this phase, the embryo takes on a human appearance, Tazwir ad-Dami, and the hadith describes this with the word shapes. Before the 42nd day, it is difficult to distinguish the human embryo from the embryos of many animals, but at this stage it becomes clearly distinguishable in its appearance. I couldn't tell a mouse embryo from a human embryo or a rabbit embryo in those very early stages. So as this hadith is making clear, is that after this 40th day, when the angel sends an angel to it, which shapes it and so on, that it takes on its human characteristics. Accompanying this development is a straightening of the embryo described by the word sawa. During this period, the embryo becomes more erect and acquires a more evenly rounded body. Some of the generalized cells of the embryo begin to differentiate into various lines and modify into different functional moieties. This process results in straightening and the formation of organs necessary for viability. As the Qur'an describes, when God created you, then, and the word fa means then, made you even and straight, sawak, and then fa, again, modified you, adalak, and so on. According to the table, and is that on the slide, the table? Showing the different stages. Here's the table which you're referring to. You can see these stages listed along the side here, and you have the shaping stage and so on. These are all correlated with the age and days and the actual size of the embryo. According to this table, which compares the three ayat on the stages of development, it is apparent that the Isam stage corresponds with the straightening stage, taswiya. The word sawak in the Quranic statement indicates the following. First, to straighten the position of the body from a bent position, and also to make uneven things leveled. The embryo at the 7th week has a bent back, thus taking the shape of the letter C during the mudga stage. In the Isam stage, the bending position is straightened and the surface becomes more even due to the disappearance of prominences and depressions. Now the Lam stage, although precursor cells, which we call myoblasts or early muscle cells, are present adjacent to the developing bones, differentiation into skeletal muscle attachments appears after the ossification process in the shaft and the ends of the bones. I was asked many times, did the bones appear before the muscles? Well, they certainly do. If you want to be logical about it, you wouldn't have muscles until you had something to attach them to. So you have bones and then the muscles. And this is clearly stated in the Qur'an that the bones appear first. A major developmental landmark during the 8th week is the Lam stage, which describes the myogenesis, that is the formation of muscles, which marks the development of the definitive muscles in the trunk and the limbs and the beginning of movement. The muscles take their position around the bones, that is, clothing the bones, and continue the process of straightening and smoothing, tazwiya. In other words, as the muscles develop, they straighten the embryo up, which the straightening and smoothing which began in the Isam stage. It is now known that the gonads, that is, the developing sex glands, differentiate into testes and ovaries at this time, that is, during the 8th week, and the Qur'an refers to this development as well. Now the growth stage, or the nasha stage, the Lam stage represents the end of the embryonic period. We say that the embryonic period ends at the end of the 8th week, and then it becomes the fetal period. So here in this terminology, the Lam stage represents the end of the embryonic period, in other words, the end of the 8th week, during which much of the organogenesis, or the development of the organ, occurs. The Qur'an uses the word, how do we pronounce that, halanga? Yeah, okay. Which translated means made or changed. Okay. in referring to all the embryonic stages. Kalakna, is that how we say it? I can't get my tongue around that one.
Yeah, khalaqna.
Kalakna, okay. Indicates that the new organized tissues are being formed in these stages. However, with the 9th week, the period of fetal development, hasha, nasha, begins. The Qur'an clearly distinguishes the beginning of this period by using the word ashanu nafu in the following statement. Then we, anasha nafu, cause him to grow and come into being and attain the definitive human form. Anasha nahu means to initiate, to grow and develop, and to rise and increase. The interpreters of the Qur'an understood the following meanings for the Quranic passage. Development of the fetus into a creature capable of speaking, hearing, and seeing, breathing the spirit into the fetus, and find the characteristics of the nasha stage. The following characteristics of the nasha stage are rapid growth and development, and this, again, this chart is from my book. As you can see, in the early stages, the 9th week, 12th, and so on, there's very little growth occurring there. The organs are developing rapidly, and then as you see from the 12th week on, there's very rapid development, and these fetuses are drawn to exact scale, so that you can see that the development is very rapid. So it's a period of rapid growth and development, which directly applies with the meaning of nasha, as explained. Directly after the lam stage, that is the 9th week, until the 12th week, the fetus grows slowly, and then the growth becomes very rapid. There's also change in the nature of the fetus and the development of its organs. The skeleton develops from soft cartilaginous bones to more solid calcified bones, and by the time of 12 weeks gestation, centers of ossification are present in most bones. The limbs become differentiated, and nails can be detected on the fingers and toes. The proportional sizes of the head, body, and limbs change, and their relative proportions become more balanced, particularly between the 9th and 12th weeks. Lanugo hair, that's very fine hair that the fetuses have and newborn babies have. At this stage of development, reveal or mimic spontaneous movements, and reflex muscular contractions can be elicited by an external stimulus. In general, the overall physiological development of the nervous system parallels the maturation of the brain and the spinal cord. Primitive and instinctive responses, such as sucking and grasping, are subcortical functions and appear much later. Nevertheless, this stage of development represents an important transitional landmark for the fetus because it has reasonably well-coordinated reflexes and movements which can be progressively vigorous in time. And I should say that we can study these stages very easily now in developing humans, because with the techniques of ultrasound and also fetoscopy, you can actually watch these fetuses moving, and you can see that some of them will even begin to suck their thumbs before they're born. Other delicate and subtle developments occur in the fetus, which has changed from its first creation, the embryo, to another one, the fetus, as the Qur'an has described. The third point is that there's extensive and continued development of organ systems. The embryonic period, which ends with the lam stage, is characterized by the gradual appearance of organs. The fetal period, which follows, is characterized by the preparation of the organ systems to perform their functions, because as soon as the baby is born, it must be able to breathe on its own, it must be able to, its heart must be able to circulate, and all the other organs have to be functional. The fetal period, which follows, is characterized then by the preparation of these organ systems to perform their functions. As the interpreters mentioned, this is the meaning of the Quranic phrase, come into being and attain the definitive form, that is, the human form. And thus the fetus is made into a creature capable of speaking, hearing, and seeing. The fourth part is the acquisition of a soul, and according to the Islamic information, the soul comes to the embryo sometime after the 40 to the 45 days in development, as mentioned in the hadith related by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. The prophet, peace be upon him, the truthful and trusted, told us, in every one of you, all components of your creation are collected together in your mother's womb by 40 days. And in that is an alaka like that, then is a mudga like that. Then God sends an angel ordered with 4 instructions. He's told to record his, the human being now developing, deeds, his provision, future benefits, whether he will be miserable or happy, and then the spirit is breathed into him, that is, the soul is acquired. The hadith indicates that there is some delay after the 7th week, according to the use of the word thumma. Embryological studies have not determined the acquisition of a soul to which the Quranic commentators referred. The nature of the soul is generally outside the realm of experimental science and is essentially unknown at this time to mankind. As God says in the Qur'an, they ask thee concerning the Spirit. Say, the Spirit comes by command of my Lord. Of knowledge it is only a little that is communicated to you, O men. However, what we do know is that there is a difference between life and the soul, although the nature of both is a mystery. A creature with a soul has self-awareness. On the other hand, the sperm and the ovum are alive, since without life they would be unable to participate in fertilization. When the fetus is capable of moving voluntarily from his or her own desire, as opposed to moving reflexly, this could be taken as evidence that he has acquired a soul. During the 10th week of development, for example, the fetus exhibits spontaneous movements and moves in response to stimuli. While these movements may reflect primitive neurological reflexes and do not present conclusive evidence of the presence of a soul, they do indicate that the soul is probably acquired near this time, and this would be in agreement with the time frame presented in the Islamic statements. Now, the word ansha nahu, as it is used in the Qur'an, covers the most apparent external and internal developments and changes in features in this stage of human development. The 3 meanings given for nasha comprehensively apply to this stage. To initiate applies with the initiation of the functioning of various organ systems. For example, the kidneys begin to form urine, blood cells begin to form in the bone marrow, and the hair follicles first appear in the 10th week, and so on, to grow and develop. Applies with the rapid growth and the extensive development of all the organ systems of the body, which occurs during this stage. And to rise and increase applies with the very rapid increase beginning in the 12th week in the length and the weight of the fetus. Therefore, the term nasha appropriately and accurately applies to the fetal period of development. And number 7, the timing of the developmental events. Not only is the sequencing of the embryonic and fetal developments indicated by the order in which they are mentioned in the Qur'an, but also the timing of these events is indicated by the use of the conjunctives fa, which means then, with a little delay, and thumma, which means then with some delay. The occurrences afa and thumma, both of which are translated as then, are as follows. We, God, created man from a quintessence of clay. We then, thumma, placed him as a nutfa, a drop, in a place of settlement, firmly fixed. Then, thumma, we made the nutfa into an alaka, leech-like structure, and then, fa, we changed the alaka into a mudga, chewed-like substance, and then, fa, we made out of that mudga izam, or skeleton or bones. Then, fa, we clothed the skeleton with lam, muscles and flesh. Then, thumma, we caused him to grow and come into being and attain the definitive form, human form. So blessed be God, the best to create. The use of thumma then indicates that there is a delay between the following events. First, the nutfa stage developing into the alaka, first stage of the shaping stage. Lam, the last stage of the shaping, kalak stage, until the development of nasha, the fetal period. During the implantation or hearth phase of the nutfa stage, there is a slow rate of development until the alaka stage. It takes about a week from the beginning of the hearth, that is the day 6, for the connecting stock to form, day 14, such as the embryo becomes attached and hanging, and it takes about 10 days for the notochord to begin development on the day 16 in order for the embryo to take on the appearance of a leech or an alica. Thus there is some delay in the formation of the alica stage. A lot of this is related to developing blood vessels to acquire nourishment from the mother. The nasha or fetal stage can be considered as being in the 9th week, but is delayed in the expression of all its characteristics until later. For example, the period between the beginning of the 9th week and the end of the 11th week is a period of relatively slow growth, and it is not until the 12th week that the rapid growth indicated by Anasha Nahu begins. Additionally, the initiation of development of certain organ systems occurs after the 8th week or after the Lam stage, but the changes in these organs become more apparent after the 11th week. Thus there is a delay until the 12th week for the full expression of Nasha, and the word Thuma accurately indicates this delay. The word Fa indicates that the following stages occur directly after one another: Alaka changing to Mudga, Mudga changing to Izam, Izam changing to Lam. The embryo of 24 to 25 days is the end of the Alaka stage, and it makes a direct change into the Mudga stage at 26 to 27 days. The Mudga stage lasts until the 6th week, and then changes directly into the Zam by the beginning of the 7th week, since the skeleton begins its appearance at that time. The Lam stage follows in the 8th week, immediately after the Zam stage, since the muscle precursor cells begin their development into muscle as soon as the bone is formed and the muscles can become attached. Thus the word Fa is used in the Qur'an to accurately and strongly indicate that these developments follow one another immediately with no delay. Now, the conclusions of this study are that the terms which have been used in the Qur'an are very descriptive of developments which occur in the various stages, and they describe these events in their chronological order. Morphological changes that occur with development in each stage are also accurately described by the use of these terms. Because the staging of human embryos is complex, going through a continuous process of change during development, it is proposed that a new system of classification could be developed using the terms mentioned in the Qur'an and Sunnah. The proposed system is simple, comprehensive, and conforms with present embryological knowledge. The facts about human development that could not have been known by Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the 7th century, because most of them were not discovered until the 20th century. Muslims and others are justified in concluding that these facts could only have been revealed to Muhammad, peace be upon him, by God, who knows all about us, not only about how we develop, but how we live and function. Thank you very much.
These facts could only have been revealed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, by God. By God.